22 dangerous places overseas Americans should not visit in 2024. An American passport will open doors to some 188 countries for you, but just because you can go somewhere doesn't mean you should. In 2024, the U.S. State Department is advising Americans to avoid 22 countries and territories, a list that seems to grow every year. As of January 2024, travel advisories for these dangerous places are at level 4, do not travel. So what happens if you go there anyway? You may be at increased risk of crime, kidnapping, terrorism, or getting caught up in civil unrest, and the U.S. government may not be able to help you. So for now, consider these destinations your travel anti-bucket list. 1. Afghanistan. Afghanistan has desperate poverty and human rights issues. It might be shorter to list problems Afghanistan doesn't have than all the ones it does. Recovery from decades of war has been stymied by intense drought and large earthquakes in 2023. The Taliban has reinstated many of their most oppressive policies, like restrictions on women's rights, floggings, and public executions. 2. Belarus. The close affiliation between Belarus and Russia makes it a place American citizens should avoid. No U.S. embassy is in operation in Belarus. The country is closely aligned with Russia in the Union State, a supranational organization that many observers see as a slow-motion annexation of Belarus. The Level 4 advisory for Belarus reflects the fact that Russia has used it as a staging point for its war on Ukraine and may do so in the future. 3. Burkina Faso. The potential for terrorist activity makes Burkina Faso an unsafe travel destination. The West African country of Burkina Faso is roiled by violence linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State organization. The northern and eastern regions of the country are in a state of emergency, with rebels operating near the border with neighboring Mali. Crime, terrorism against civilian targets, and kidnapping make this one of the most dangerous places for foreigners to visit. 4. Central African Republic. The security situation is dangerously unsettled in the Central African Republic. Large areas of the country are under the control of various armed groups that attack civilians routinely. 5. Gaza. The situation in Gaza is so dangerous the U.S. State Department advises completing a will and leaving DNA samples with your doctor before traveling there. Since the October 7, 2023 terrorist attack by Hamas, the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have been conducting extensive military operations in Gaza against Hamas. 6. Haiti. Natural disasters have displaced thousands of people in Haiti and contributed to social unrest. American citizens are frequently the target of kidnapping for ransom. Even those traveling in larger numbers in convoys have been targeted. 7. Iran. Dual Iranian-American citizens visiting family and friends in Iran may be especially vulnerable to harassment and/or false detention. But the threat also extends to individual Americans who may become pawns in the struggle between the two countries. U.S. citizens in Iran have been kidnapped, detained, or arrested on false charges. 8. Iraq. Iraq suffers frequent terrorism, such as the car bomb that created this explosion. The Baghdad International Airport is not secure, so the U.S. government has instructed its personnel not to use it. Throughout the country, Americans need to be wary of possible civil unrest, terrorism, kidnapping, and military combat. 9. Lebanon. Beirut is a beautiful seaside city, but the security situation makes it a place to avoid traveling. The United States Embassy has returned to normal staffing levels, but American citizens are still warned not to travel to Lebanon. This is due to the threat of combat operations, crime, terrorist attacks, and protests against the government. 10. Libya. Tripoli, Libya's capital and largest city, is beset by crime and violence. Since the ouster of dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, peace has been elusive in Libya. 2 civil wars ended in an uneasy truce in 2020, but the central government is still weak, and armed groups control large areas of the country. 11. Mali. Americans should avoid travel to Mali due to the unsettled political situation there. Americans should not travel to Mali due to the danger of terrorism and crime, including kidnapping. Targets of terrorism include government facilities, places of worship, and facilities visited by foreigners. 12. Mexico. Some parts of Mexico suffer from heightened gang activity and violence that make them places for Americans to avoid. Level 4 advisories exist for each of the following states due to the danger of crimes such as kidnapping, carjacking, robbery, and homicide: Colima, Guerrero, Michoacán, Sinaloa, Tamaulipas, and Zacatecas. 13. Myanmar. Thousands of people are internally displaced in Myanmar due to natural disasters and fighting between the government and rebel factions. Myanmar has been under military rule since 2021. Since then, it has been common for protests and demonstrations against the government to break out, followed by harsh repression of protesters and bystanders. 14. North Korea. Kim Jong-un, the mercurial leader of North Korea, keeps tensions with South Korea and its allies at a fever pitch. There is a high risk of wrongful arrest and long-term detention by the North Korean regime, which likes to take hostages as bargaining chips. 15. Russia. Aggression against Ukraine, including this missile attack on a school, has made Russia into an international pariah. Since it invaded Ukraine in 2022, Russia has been under stringent international sanctions. The Russian government has placed limitations on the movements of embassy personnel, so their ability to respond to the needs of U.S. citizens is limited. 16. Somalia. Piracy off the coast of Somalia is a significant problem for international shipping through the busy Gulf of Aden. Illegal roadblocks are common and terrorist attacks can take place anywhere in the country by suicide bombers, car bombs, or mortar fire. 17. South Sudan. People in South Sudan, one of the world's newest countries, live in desperate poverty. Independent from Sudan only since 2011, South Sudan is one of the world's newest countries and still has weak central authority. Guns are widely available to the population and rival political and ethnic groups are fighting in various parts of the country. 18. Sudan. Sudan is racked by crime, armed conflict, natural disasters, and a refugee crisis. Heavy fighting is going on throughout the country. The international airport in the capital and the border with Chad are closed. 19. Syria. Multiple factions and foreign nations are engaged in military action in Syria. Civil war broke out in Syria in 2011 and the United States has not had an embassy there since 2012. Crime, civil unrest, and armed conflict are a danger all over the country. 21. Venezuela. The slums of Caracas, Venezuela are home to thousands of people who struggle to support themselves under the government's disastrous economic policies. It is not unusual for the Venezuelan authorities to break these up with tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets.